lovingly created a collection of biblical stories, enhanced with a touch of drama and imagination. While we remain faithful to the essence and teachings of these timeless tales, we have woven a bit of fiction to help you drift into a peaceful slumber. Relax and let these stories guide you into a restful night's sleep. The Shepherd's Battle. The golden sun dipped low over the rugged hills of Bethlehem, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Young David, the shepherd, stood watch over his father's flock, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. The wind whispered through the olive trees, carrying with it the distant howls of the wilderness. David's heart, though youthful, was steeled by the responsibility he bore. David knew these lands well, having spent countless days and nights among the sheep. He had learned to read the signs of the earth, how the rustle of the leaves could signal a predator, or how the sudden stillness of the flock meant danger was near. He was no ordinary boy. His faith in God was as strong as the sturdy staff he carried. But this evening, a new challenge awaited him, one that would test his faith and courage like never before. As twilight deepened, David noticed the sheep growing restless, their bleating tinged with fear. His hand tightened around the sling that hung at his side, his fingers brushing against the smooth stones in his pouch. His heart began to pound as a shadow emerged from the thicket. A massive bear, its fur matted with dirt, its eyes gleaming with hunger. The bear lumbered forward, its growl a low rumble that sent shivers down David's spine. The sheep huddled together, their fear noticeable. But David did not flee. Instead, he stepped forward, placing himself between the bear and the flock. He knew the stories of shepherds who had faced wild beasts before, and he understood the dangers. Yet, something within him, a strength born of both faith and experience, compelled him to stand his ground. Drawing a stone from his pouch, David whispered a prayer. His eyes locked on the bear. The creature roared, charging toward him with terrifying speed. With a swift, practiced motion, David loaded the stone into his sling and swung it above his head. The stone flew, striking the bear on the forehead with force that stunned the beast. But the battle was not over. The bear staggered, momentarily dazed, but its fury was far from spent. It reared up on its hind legs, towering over David, its massive paws ready to strike. In that moment, David's fear was eclipsed by a fierce resolve. He hurled his staff, striking the bear's snout, then lunged forward, grabbing his knife. With a cry that echoed across the hills, David plunged the blade into the bear's side, driving it back. The bear roared in pain, staggering backward before collapsing onto the ground, its life ebbing away. David stood over the fallen beast, his breath coming in gasps, his hands trembling. The sheep, sensing the danger had passed, began to graze once more as if nothing had happened. But David knew that this battle had changed him, hardened him, prepared him for the trials that lay ahead. As he knelt to clean his blade, David heard another sound. A low, guttural growl from the opposite side of the flock. His heart sank as he turned to see a lion emerging from the shadows, its eyes fixed on the sheep. The lion was larger and more fearsome than any David had ever seen, its muscles rippling beneath the tawny fur. This was no ordinary predator. It was a king of the wild, and it had chosen its prey. But David was not the same boy who had faced the bear. He was now a warrior, his spirit tempered by the struggle. With a quick, silent prayer, he prepared to face the lion. The beast crouched low, ready to pounce, its eyes blazing with the thrill of the hunt. But David was quicker. He reached for his sling, his hands moving with the precision of one who had practiced this motion 1,000 times. Another stone flew, striking the lion square between the eyes. The lion faltered, but it did not fall. It shook its head, dazed but still dangerous. David knew he had only moments to act. He charged the lion, his staff raised high. With all his might, he brought it down on the lion's head, then drove his knife deep into the beast's chest. The lion let out a final furious roar before collapsing to the ground, its powerful body finally still. David stood, panting, sweat dripping down his brow, his body aching from the fight. The night was silent now, the only sound the gentle rustle of the sheep as they settled back into their grazing. David looked at the two fallen beasts, the bear and the lion, and felt a surge of triumph and gratitude. He knew that it was not his strength alone that had saved him, but the hand of God guiding his every move. As he gathered his flock and led them back to safety, David felt a deep peace settle over him. He had faced the wild and emerged victorious, not by the might of his own hand, but by the power of his faith. And though he was still young, David knew the greater battles awaited him, battles that would demand not only his courage, but the full measure of his heart and soul. The first light. In the beginning there was nothing. The universe was a vast, empty void, silent and cold and formless. But within the void, a presence stirred, a being of immense power and infinite wisdom, existing beyond time and space. This was the Creator, the one who would bring light to the darkness and shape the chaos into order. For eons, the Creator observed the void, contemplating what could be. The void was not truly empty, for within it existed potential, the raw material of existence, waiting to be brought to light. The Creator's thoughts were deep and deliberate, and finally the moment arrived. A decision was made. "Let there be light," the Creator commanded, and the void trembled as a blinding light burst forth, piercing the darkness. The light spread rapidly, illuminating the endless expanse, revealing the swirling clouds of cosmic dust, the formless waters, and the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The Creator smiled, for this was good. As the light continued to expand, the Creator spoke, not to the void, but to the unseen entities that had always been with him. Ancient beings of light and energy, the first of his creations, known as Elohim. They had existed in silence, waiting for the moment when their Creator would call them forth to witness and participate in the birth of the universe. "It is time," the Creator said, his voice resonating through the newly born cosmos. The Elohim gathered around, their forms shimmering in the radiant light, each one unique, yet all bound by their love and reverence for the Creator. "What shall we do, Lord?" asked one of the Elohim, a being of great wisdom and serenity, her voice a soft whisper like the wind over calm waters. The Creator gazed out over the expanse of light and darkness. "We will bring order to this chaos. From this light, we shall create the heavens and the earth. But first, there must be separation, distinction between the light and the darkness." With a mere thought, the Creator stretched forth his hand, and the light responded. The day was born as the Creator separated it from the night, drawing a line between the time of light and the time of darkness. The Elohim watched in awe as the fabric of reality began to take shape before their eyes. Yet, as the Creator worked, there was a sense of tension, a quiet suspense that hung in the air. For the void, though now filled with light, still harbored the remnants of chaos, a force that resisted the Creator's order. It swirled at the edges of the light, dark tendrils that sought to encroach upon the newly formed day. The Creator, aware of this, spoke with authority. "We must shape the firmament to divide the waters from the waters and establish the heavens." His voice was calm, yet carried an undercurrent of resolve, as if he was preparing for an unseen challenge. The Elohim moved at his command, each contributing their energy to the formation of the heavens. The skies were drawn across the firmament, vast and beautiful, as the Creator's power held the chaos at bay. The waters above were separated from the waters below, creating a great expanse that shimmered with celestial light. But as the heavens took form, the Elohim noticed something unsettling. The chaos at the edges of the light seemed to pulse with life, as if it were aware of what was happening. It pushed back against the light, testing the boundaries set by the Creator. The Elohim exchanged worried glances, sensing a growing tension. "Lord," another of the Elohim spoke, a being of fire and strength, his voice like thunder. "The chaos stirs. It does not rest." The Creator nodded, his gaze never leaving the swirling darkness beyond the light. "It is as I expected. The darkness resents the light, for in the light all things are revealed. But fear not, for the light will prevail." With renewed determination, the Creator continued his work. He called forth the dry land from the waters, and the earth emerged rich and fertile. Mountains rose, valleys formed, and rivers carved their paths through the land. The Creator smiled at his creation, but the tension remained. He knew the chaos would not easily relinquish its hold. Next, the Creator adorned the earth with life, plants and trees of every kind, lush and vibrant. The Elohim marveled at the beauty of the growing world, yet they remained vigilant, sensing the lurking presence of chaos, still waiting at the edges. Peter, sensing their unease, addressed them. "Do not be troubled. The darkness cannot overcome the light. We shall continue to create, for each act of creation diminishes the power of the chaos." With these words, the Creator brought forth the stars in the heavens, placing them in the firmament to light the night and to mark the seasons, days, and years. The Elohim watched as the stars twinkled into existence, each one a beacon of hope in the darkness. But the creation of life was not yet complete. The Creator moved to the waters and the sky, filling them with living creatures. Birds that soared through the heavens and fish that swam in the seas. The earth was teeming with life, vibrant and full of energy, and yet the darkness at the edges seemed to pulse even more intensely, as if it sensed the growing strength of the light. Finally, the Creator turned his attention to the crowning achievement of his work, humanity. Care and precision, he shaped the first man from the dust of the earth, breathing life into him. The man opened up his eyes and beheld the beauty of the world around him. The Elohim watched in awe as the Creator fashioned the first woman from the man's side, her form graceful and radiant. "Behold," the Creator said, "man and woman, created in our image. They shall be fruitful and multiply, filling the earth and subduing it." As the first humans took their place in the world, the Elohim rejoiced, for they knew the Creator's plan was unfolding perfectly. Yet, the darkness, now more aware of what had been created, seemed to coil in response, gathering its strength. The Creator, aware of the looming threat, spoke to the Elohim with a tone of quiet resolve. The chaos will not cease its struggle. It will seek to corrupt what has been made, to bring disorder wherever there is order. But remember this, the light has been set. The darkness will never overcome it. The Elohim nodded, their forms glowing with determination. They understood the Creator's words, and they knew their role in the ongoing struggle between light and darkness. They were the guardians of creation, the keepers of the order that had been established. And so, the world was completed, full of life, beauty, and endless possibilities. The Creator rested, not because he was weary, but because his work was perfect and the foundation had been set. Yet, he remained vigilant, ever watchful over his creation, for he knew the battle between light and darkness was far from over. The Elohim took their places, watching over the world with care, ready to defend it from the encroaching chaos. And as the first night fell, the stars above shone brightly, a testament to the enduring power of light in the face of darkness. The Shepherd King. In the humble home of Jesse, a father gathered his sons, unaware that the course of history was about to change forever. Far from this tranquil scene, the prophet Samuel traveled the dusty roads with heavy heart. Samuel was a man of God, his life devoted to the service of the Almighty. But today, his mission was unlike any before. God had rejected Saul, the king he had once chosen, and now Samuel carried a new anointing oil, seeking the one who would take Saul's place. The weight of this task pressed down on Samuel's spirit, for he knew that this new king would face untold challenges and would need to lead Israel with wisdom and courage. Samuel arrived in Bethlehem as the evening shadows lengthened. The town's elders greeted him with a mixture of reverence and fear. The presence of the prophet often signaled a momentous event, and they could sense that something significant was about to unfold. "Do you come in peace?" one of the elders asked, his voice trembling. Samuel nodded solemnly. "In peace have I come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." Samuel then sent word to Jesse, the father of many sons, instructing him to bring his whole household to the sacrifice. Jesse obeyed, gathering his sons and leading them to the place of worship. Each of them was strong, tall, and handsome, fit to be a king, or so it seemed. As the family arrived, Samuel looked upon Jesse's oldest son, Eliab. The young man stood tall, his posture confident, his appearance regal. Samuel's heart stirred. "Surely this is the Lord's anointed," he thought. But as Samuel reached for the horn of oil, God's voice, clear and resolute, spoke to him. "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Samuel hesitated, then lowered the horn. Eliab, confused, stepped back as his brothers were called forward one by one. Each son was presented to Samuel, but each time God's voice echoed the same message: "I have not chosen this one." Jesse grew anxious as the line of sons dwindled. He had presented 7 of his sons, and none had been chosen. Finally, Samuel looked at Jesse and asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" He hesitated, his mind turning to the youngest, David. David, the shepherd, the dreamer, the boy who spent his days in the fields, playing his harp and composing songs to the Lord. He was not considered important enough to be summoned for such an occasion. "There is still the youngest," Jesse admitted, almost apologetically, "but he is tending the sheep." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." As a servant was dispatched to the fields, an uneasy silence fell over the gathering. Samuel waited, his heart pounding, his mind racing with questions. Who was this boy, this overlooked shepherd, who had been forgotten even by his own father? David, unaware of the momentous event unfolding, was alone with his flock. The sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky. Strummed his harp as he sang praises to the Lord, his voice a soft melody that mingled with the evening breeze. He had always felt a deep connection to God in these quiet moments, surrounded by the simplicity of nature. But tonight, something stirred within him, a sense of expectation, as if the very air was alive with anticipation. When the servant arrived, breathless and urgent, David looked up, startled. "David," the servant called, "your father summons you. Come quickly." Confused but obedient, David left his flock and hurried to his father's house. As he approached, he saw the gathering, the faces of his brothers, and stern, thoughtful expression of the prophet Samuel. David's heart raced as he stepped forward, feeling every eye upon him. Samuel's gaze locked onto the boy before him. David was different than his brothers. He was young, with ruddy cheeks and bright, piercing eyes that held a depth of spirit far beyond his years. There was something pure, something undeniably powerful about him. And as Samuel looked at David, the voice of God filled his soul with certainty. "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." Without hesitation, Samuel took the horn of oil and approached David. The young shepherd stood still, his heart pounding in his chest as the prophet raised the horn above his head. The oil poured down, flowing over David's brow, running in the rivulets down his face, anointing him as the chosen one of God. In that moment, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David with a force that shook him to his very core. David's eyes closed as he felt the weight of the anointing, the divine power that now rested upon him. Visions flashed before his mind's eye, battles, victories, betrayals, and triumphs. He saw a great throne, a kingdom united, and a legacy that would endure through the ages. But he also saw the struggles, the temptations, the heavy burden of leadership that would test him in ways he could not yet comprehend. As the oil dripped from his face, David opened his eyes, now filled with a newfound determination and strength. He was no longer just a shepherd boy. He was the anointed king of Israel, chosen by God to lead his people. The gathering was silent, the air thick with awe and reverence. Samuel stepped back, his heart filled with a mixture of sorrow for Saul and hope for Israel's future. He knew that David's journey would be long and fraught with challenges, but he also knew that God's hand was upon this young man. "The Lord has chosen you, David," Samuel said, his voice filled with both authority and compassion. "You will be king, but your path will not be easy. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and He will guide your steps." David nodded, his heart swelling with a mixture of fear and excitement. He did not fully understand what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer alone. God was with him, and that was enough. As David returned to the fields, the stars above him seemed to shine brighter, the night air filled with a sense of destiny. He would continue to tend his sheep, play his harp, and sing his songs, but now he did so with the knowledge that he was chosen, that he was the shepherd who would one day lead a nation. And so the story of David began, a story that would be told for generations to come, a story of faith, courage, and divine call that transformed a shepherd boy into a king. The rebellion of the morning star. In the beginning, before the earth was formed and before time itself began, its relentless march, there was heaven, a realm of unimaginable beauty and light, where the glory of God illuminated all things. In this perfect domain, there existed countless angels, beings of pure spirit, each created to serve and worship the Almighty with unwavering devotion. Among these celestial beings was one of extraordinary brilliance and power, Lucifer, the morning star. He was the most radiant of all, a being of unmatched beauty, endowed with wisdom and grace beyond any other. His voice, when he sang, filled the heavens with melodies so pure that even the stars seemed to shimmer in response. Lucifer's light was second only to God's, and he stood as the chief among archangels, revered by all. But within the heart of the morning star, a seed of pride began to take root, a pride born of his unmatched splendor and power. As he gazed upon the glory of heaven, a dark thought formed in his mind. Why should I, who am so glorious, serve another? Why should I bow before the throne when I could sit upon it? These thoughts, once mere whispers in his heart, grew into a burning ambition. Lucifer desired the throne of God, the seat of ultimate power and authority. He coveted the worship that was due to God alone, and in his pride, he believed that he was worthy of it. His light, once pure and beautiful, began to flicker with a dark, rebellious fire. Lucifer's thoughts did not go unnoticed. The Almighty, who knows the hearts of all his creation, was aware of the darkness growing within Lucifer. But God, in his infinite wisdom and love, allowed Lucifer the freedom to choose his path. The angels of heaven watched with growing unease as Lucifer's light began to change, becoming harsh and unsettling. "Brothers," Lucifer began to whisper to the closest to him, his voice still as enchanting as ever, but now laced with a dangerous edge. "Why should we serve? We are beings of power, of light. Why do we bow before a throne when we could rule in our own right?" His words, honeyed with deceit, began to sway some of the angels. They, too, had basked in Lucifer's glory and were captivated by his charisma. "Why should we not be like the Most High?" they murmured amongst themselves. And soon a third of heavenly hosts had been drawn into Lucifer's rebellion. The tension in heaven grew noticeable. The angels who remained loyal to God could feel the coming storm, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that a great conflict was inevitable. Among them was Michael, the archangel of righteousness and the commander of God's army. Michael had always been a fierce defender of the Almighty's will, and he watched Lucifer's machinations with a heavy heart. Then came the day when Lucifer, emboldened by the number of angels he had turned to his cause, made his move. He ascended toward the throne of God, his light blazing with defiance. "I will ascend to heaven," he declared, his voice ringing through the celestial realm. "I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the Mount of Assembly, on the heights of the north. I will make myself like the Most High." His declaration was a spark that ignited the heavens. The loyal angels, led by Michael, drew their swords of light, their wings spreading wide as they prepared to defend the throne. Michael's voice thundered across the expanse. "Who is like God? None can stand against the Almighty. To arms, my brothers, for today we fight for the glory of the Lord." And so the war in heaven began. The heavens, once filled with peace and harmony, erupted into a battlefield of unimaginable scale. Angelic hosts clashed in a storm of light and sound, the very fabric of reality trembling under the force of their blows. Filled with the sound of swords clashing, wings beating ferociously, and the cries of those who fought for righteousness or rebellion. Lucifer, his heart burning with hatred and ambition, fought with all fury of being who believed he had been wronged. His followers, now fallen from grace, fought with the desperation of those who had gambled everything on a single throw. The light of heaven was now marred by the dark flames of rebellion, and once pure radiance of the morning star had become a twisted shadow of its former glory. Michael, wielding a sword of divine light, sought out Lucifer in the midst of the chaos. The two archangels met in battle that shook the heavens to the core. "Lucifer, Michael cried, his voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. You have chosen the path of darkness. This ends now. I will not bow. Lucifer roared in defiance, his eyes blazing with a malevolent fire. I will not be a servant. I will rule or I will destroy. Their battle was fierce and terrible, a clash of wills as much as a clash of swords. But Michael fought not with pride or ambition, but with the righteous power of God behind him. His strength was not his own, but that of the Almighty. And in the end, it was the divine power that proved too much for Lucifer. With a final mighty blow, Michael struck Lucifer down, casting him out of heaven. The morning star, once the brightest of all, fell from the heights of the celestial realm, his light dimming as he plummeted into the abyss. The angels who had followed him were cast out as well, their rebellion crushed, their wings torn and their forms twisted by their fall. The war was over, but the scars remained. The loyal angels, though victorious, mourned for those who had fallen, for their brothers who had chosen the path of pride and had been lost to darkness. The heavens were once again filled with light, but the memory of the rebellion would linger, a reminder of the dangers of pride and ambition. As for Lucifer, known now as Satan, the adversary, he found himself in a new realm, a dark, chaotic void from the light of God. Here in the depths of the abyss, he vowed to continue his rebellion, wage war against the Creator by corrupting the new world that would soon be formed, and by leading mankind away from the light. But the angels, led by Michael, remained vigilant, ever watchful for the day when the final battle would be fought, when the forces of light and darkness would clash once more. For they knew that while Lucifer had been cast out, the war between good and evil was far from over. And so, the stage was set for the eternal struggle, a struggle that would reach from the highest heavens to the lowest depths, and would ultimately decide the fate of all creation. David and Goliath. David was the youngest of his 8 brothers, and while his older brothers went off to battle as soldiers, David stayed home in the little town of Bethlehem, tending to his family's sheep. Though David was small and young, he was brave and strong in his heart. He loved to sing songs to God as he watched over his sheep. One day, a great and terrible thing happened. A mighty army, the Philistines, came to make war against the people of Israel. And in the Philistine army, there was a giant named Goliath. Goliath was taller than the tallest tree, stronger than the strongest lion, and his voice boomed like thunder. He wore armor made of bronze that shone like the sunlight, and he carried a massive spear that was as heavy as a tree trunk. Every day, Goliath stood in the valley between the two armies and shouted, "I am Goliath, the greatest warrior. Send out your strongest man to fight me. If he wins, we will be your slaves, but if I win, you will serve us." The soldiers of Israel were terrified. They trembled at the sound of Goliath's voice and hid behind their shields, for no one dared to face the giant. For 40 days, Goliath taunted the Israelites, and every day they cowered in fear. One morning, David's father Jesse called him. "David," he said, "take this bread and cheese to your brothers at the battlefield and see how they are doing." David was eager to help, so he set out early the next day, carrying the food his father had prepared. When he reached the battlefield, he found the army of Israel camped on one side of the valley, with the Philistines on the other. As David greeted his brothers, he heard a loud, thunderous voice echo across the valley. It was Goliath. David watched as the giant stepped forward and roared his challenge. "Who will fight me? Where is your champion? Come and face Goliath if you dare." David looked around and saw the fear in the eyes of the soldiers. His brothers tried to pull him away, saying, "This is no place for you, David. Go back to the sheep." But David was not afraid. He turned to the soldiers and asked, "Why is everyone so scared? Who is this giant that he could defy the armies of the living God?" When King Saul heard that the young boy was asking about Goliath, he sent for David. The king was surprised when he saw the boy standing before him, with no armor, no sword, just a sling and a shepherd's staff. "You cannot fight Goliath," Saul said, shaking his head. "You are just a boy, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David stood tall and brave. "Your Majesty," he said, "I have faced dangers before. When a lion or a bear came to attack my father's sheep, I fought them off with my hands. The Lord who had saved me from the lion and the bear will save me from this giant too." Saul saw the determination in David's eyes and knew that this boy had something special, something the giant didn't have. So the king agreed and offered David his own royal armor. But when David tried it on, it was far too big and heavy. "I cannot fight in this," David said, taking off the armor. "I will fight Goliath with what I know." David walked down to the stream that flowed through the valley and picked up 5 smooth stones, placed them in his pouch. Then, with his sling in hand and his trust in God, David walked out to meet the giant. When Goliath saw David approaching, he laughed, a deep, booming laugh that echoed through the valley. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" he snared. "Come here, boy, and I will feed your flesh to the birds and the beasts." But David was not afraid. He called out to the giant, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. Today, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and everyone will know that there is a God in Israel. The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." Goliath's face twisted with rage, and he began to move forward, his massive feet shaking the ground. But David was ready. He reached into his pouch, took out one of the smooth stones, placed it in his sling, and swung it with all his might. The stone flew through the air, faster than the eye could see, and struck Goliath right in the forehead. The giant's eyes widened in shock, and with a great crash, he fell face first to the ground, defeated. The Philistines' army grasped in horror, and the soldiers of Israel cheered with joy. David ran to Goliath, took the giant's own sword, and held it high in victory. The battle was won, and the Philistines fled in fear, chased by now the emboldened army of Israel. David returned to the camp a hero, his heart filled with gratitude and praise for God. He knew that it wasn't his strength or skill that had won the battle, but the power of God who had been with him every step of the way. From that day on, David became known as the shepherd who defeated the giant, the boy who trusted in God and saved his people. And though he was still young, everyone could see that David was destined for greatness, for he had a heart of courage and faith that would one day make him a mighty king. The Garden of Shadows. In the beginning, the world was new and untouched, a canvas of creation waiting to be filled with life and beauty. The Almighty, the creator of all things, looked upon the earth with love and purpose. From the dust of ground, he formed a man, shaping him with his own hands, breathing into him the breath of life. The man opened up his eyes, and for the first time, the earth witnessed the birth of Adam, the first of humankind. Adam awoke to a world bathed in light and wonder. All around him, the earth teemed with life, lush gardens, vibrant flowers, animals of every kind roaming freely in peace. Yet, there was something more, something extraordinary. A garden unlike any other, the Garden of Eden. This was the dwelling place of the Creator in his first creation, a place where heaven kissed earth. Adam walked through the garden, marveling at the beauty around him. The trees were laden with fruit, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Streams of crystal clear water flowed through the garden, nourishing the earth and bringing life to all it touched. Birds sang melodies that filled the air, and the animals, from the mighty lion to the delicate butterfly, lived in harmony. Yet, as perfect as Eden was, Adam felt a loneliness deep within him. The Creator, seeing this, decided that Adam should not be alone. And also, while Adam slept, the Almighty took one of his ribs and with divine craftsmanship fashioned a woman. When Adam awoke, he found beside him a being of such grace and beauty that he was overcome with joy. This was Eve, the first woman created to be Adam's companion and equal. Together, Adam and Eve explored the wonders of Eden, delighting in each other's company and in the world around them. The Creator walked with them in the cool of the day, speaking to them of love, life, and great purpose for which they had been made. He gave them dominion over the earth to tend it and to keep it, and to enjoy all that he had created. But with this gift came one command, clear and solemn. You may eat from every tree in the garden, the Creator said, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will surely die. The tree stood in the center of the garden, its fruit glowing with mysterious allure. Adam and Eve gazed upon it, understanding the seriousness of the Creator's command, and they vowed to obey. But unseen by them, a shadow lurked in the garden, watching and waiting. This shadow was the serpent, a creature of cunning and malice. The serpent was no ordinary creature. It was one embodiment of the adversary, the fallen one, who had once been known as Lucifer, the most beautiful and powerful of the angels. Cast out of heaven for his pride and rebellion, the serpent now sought to corrupt what the Creator had made good. One day, as Eve wandered through the garden, she found herself near the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The serpent, who had been waiting for such an opportunity, slithered silently through the grass, its scales shimmering with an unnatural light. It coiled itself around a branch of the forbidden tree, its eyes glowing with vicious intent. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The serpent hissed, in its voice a whisper of temptation. Eve, startled by the serpent's words, replied, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat the fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." The serpent's eyes narrowed, and it smiled with a wicked grin. "You will not surely die," it whispered, its voice dripping with deceit. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Eve hesitated, her heart pounding. The serpent's words were enticing, filling her mind with visions of wisdom and power, of becoming like the Creator himself. She looked at the fruit, its surface gleaming in the dappled sunlight, and a desire stirred within her, a desire to know, to understand, to be more than she was. Eve reached out, her hand trembling, and plucked the fruit from the tree. The serpent watched with satisfaction as she took a bite, the juices running down her chin. The taste was sweet yet bitter, as if it held the knowledge of all that was good and all that was dark. In that moment, her eyes were open, and she felt a rush of awareness of both wonder and dread. She hurried to find Adam, who was tending to the garden nearby. When she showed him the fruit, her eyes wide with excitement and fear, Adam's heart sank. He knew what she had done, and yet, as she offered the fruit to him, he could not resist. The bond between them was strong, and he took the fruit from her hand, eating it as well. Immediately, everything changed. The world around them seemed to shift, the light dimming as shadows crept in. The harmony of the garden was shattered, replaced by a feeling of loss and shame. Adam and Eve looked at each other, realizing for the first time that they were naked, exposed, and vulnerable. They quickly gathered leaves to cover themselves, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they have done. As the evening came, the Creator walked through the garden, calling for them. "Where are you?" His voice filled with sorrow they had never heard before. Adam and Eve, trembling with fear, hid among the trees. But they could not escape the Creator's gaze. Finally, they stepped out, their heads bowed in shame. "We heard you in the garden," Adam said, his voice shaking. "And I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." The Creator's eyes, filled with both love and sadness, looked upon him. "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" Adam, desperate to shift the blame, pointed to Eve. "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it." Eve, in turn, pointed to the serpent. "The serpent deceived me and I ate it." The Creator turned to the serpent, his voice now filled with righteous anger. "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put an enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel." The serpent recoiled, hissing in fury as it slithered away into the shadows, knowing that its victory was temporary and that its ultimate defeat had been foretold. Then, with great sorrow, the Creator spoke to Adam and Eve. He told them of the pain and toil that would now be their lot, of the brokenness that had entered the world through their disobedience. But even in his judgment, there was mercy. The Creator made garments of skin to clothe them, a sign that he would not abandon them even though they had strayed. Finally, with a heavy heart, the Creator led them out of the Garden of Eden, placing a cherubim with a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Adam and Eve, now exiled from paradise, walked into a world that was no longer perfect, but still held the high hope of redemption. For the Creator had a plan that would one day bring forth a Savior, born of a woman who would crush the head of the serpent and restore what had been lost. And though the shadows had fallen, the light of that promise would shine through the ages, guiding humanity back to the heart of the Creator.